Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside Out Smile. I'm your host, Dr. Amber Q, and I'm delighted to welcome you back again because I'm very excited about today's episode. And the reason is that, as you know, my previous episode, I was speaking about Little House on the Prairie, and I felt as if that was kind of, really, really nostalgic episode, but we get even deeper today. So essentially, I was speaking about the simplicity and emotional warmth of the characters in Little House on the Prairie. And then the other day, I came across Melissa Gilbert, who played Laura Ingalls, her Instagram account. There was an article with her Instagram account, and I was having a look at that. And of course, she's married to one of the main actors from my favourite adult TV show. So yes, I loved Little House on the Prairie as a child, and yes, I did watch it as an adult as well. And then as an adult, though, my favourite show was another show called 30-something. And that was a more complex, sort of reflective episode, sort of the emotional messiness of adulthood. And I think that, I remember thinking at the time when Friends came out that, they're trying to plug the gap of a 20-something. And that's exactly what they did. And so it's just so funny because when I saw that Instagram account and both of them together, both those actors together, the actress that played Laura Ingalls, Melissa Gilbert, and Timothy Busfield, who played Elliot in 30-something, it just kind of brought both those worlds together in an unexpected way. And so it led me down a really nostalgic rabbit hole that was just so genuinely lovely. And today I want to chat a little bit about that, because why is it that nostalgia is so powerful? And when we revisit sort of old stories, how does that affect us and the person that we are today? Because what I'd like to say is that at the moment, life is so, I feel bad saying this because people are suffering so much all over the world. And it's really interesting because I think that, what is it with nostalgia? Because certainly when I saw this Instagram account, I was looking at the actors. I kind of Googled the 30-something actors and saw some interviews, behind the scenes stories, saw some clips. And it was just really lovely. And it made me realize something. And the thing is that, why do we like nostalgia? And I suddenly realized as I was thinking about this, that essentially it's not because we miss the past, but we miss who we were when we first experienced it. And I was thinking about this because essentially, when I was a child, I loved Little House on the Prairie. It was comfort, family and structure. And as an adult, although I was sort of just into my 20s, and actually I think I was a teen when 30-something actually came out, because I remember seeing it. I remember seeing the pilot before I went to dental school, and then I watched it in dental school, and I remember being in halls, and I don't want to give it away in case anyone ends up watching it, but essentially there was a very sad episode and everyone was sort of really upset. And so it's so interesting that I think 30-something provided complexity, identity, growth. And it just reminded me of, literally, I can remember that room in halls of residence, and the TV, and hanging out with my friends, and, having clinic the next day. It was just so interesting to remember those days. And I feel that those childhood programs and adult program, I should say, really captured sort of almost the bookends of who I've become. Family and friends, those are the things that matter, right? And I think one of the most beautiful things about nostalgia is that it's not just emotional, it's psychological, because research shows that when we look at nostalgia, it can stabilize mood, improve your optimism, it helps with kind of meaning making, and it reminds us of our own resilience. And hey, you definitely needed resilience for dental school. So it's not actually about living in the past, it's about reconnecting with parts of ourselves that we've forgotten. And it did make me think about the person that I am, essentially. And when I rewatched Little House sort of clips, I remember simplicity, and when I revisit 30-something, I remember emotional truth telling. And it's, and between those two, it really makes me recall what I value today, which is connection, sincerity, and those small human moments that matter, all wrapped up in a story. So it's not actually really a rabbit hole in the sense that it wasn't distraction. It's like a gentle recalibration. And I think sometimes we need that, because the reality of the current world is that it's pretty dark at the moment, isn't it? I mean, it's very depressing in one sense. And I think that when we look back at stories and characters that we once loved, we do recognize parts of ourselves that they quietly shaped. For example, Laura Ingalls taught me curiosity, integrity, courage, and finding beauty in small things was wonderful. And as an adult, the cast of 30-something showed me relationship dynamics, emotional honesty, and ambition mixed with vulnerability, and just the complicated art of trying to figure out life. And it kind of, I think, makes sense why sort of the connection between those two was so complementary, because they kind of held my hand as I grew up, just in different eras of my life. And revisiting them now just kind of feels like a reunion with parts of myself that maybe had gone a little quiet. I'm not sure. And the thing is that, when I watched the pilot again of 30-something, I can remember actually seeing it. I can remember seeing the advert and saying to my sister and to my friends, wow, this looks really amazing. And, kind of scheduling the fact that I was going to watch that, because at that time, I remember I was very active kind of in the horsey world. I was learning to ride. I was attending horsey events at my local riding school. I was at the gym twice a day. This was before I even had my darling poodle. And this was literally before dental school. And so it's so interesting, because the deeper I went into confession time, I didn't just watch the pilot. I started to watch some episodes. And I basically realized something, that, that the world is constantly trying to push us forward, by this, by that, etc. Whereas nostalgia lets us pause. It gives us permission to breathe, to reflect, and, just to reconnect with those emotional threads that have been weaving through our whole lives. And it's so interesting, because when I think about the people that I knew at the time, there's so many people later on in my life that didn't know me in that phase of my life. And it's just so interesting, because it just shows you, when you look at the actors and the backstage sort of, it's so funny, because the two main characters, there were sort of four main characters in 30-something. I say four, there were other main characters as well, but mainly, actually maybe I should, there were kind of seven main characters, but it was centered on two couples. So one of the couples, Timothy Busfield, was married to Laura Ingalls, and the other couple was Michael and Hope, which, let's face it, everyone wants a Michael. And but the funny thing is that two of those co-stars, so the guy who played Michael in real life, Kenneth Olin, and Nancy, who played Elliot's wife. So Elliot was the character that Timothy Busfield married. I'm sorry, I'm really getting into this show. Basically, they're married in real life. I could have said that in a much more eloquent way. And if this was an AI podcast, it would be much more elegant and smooth. But I'm just so excited about it. But, and I looked up Ken Olin, and he just seems to be such a lovely guy. Oh my God, such a lovely guy. His daughter is gorgeous, and it's just amazing. But it reminds me of how many chapters life can actually hold. You know, you look at the actors and the things that they do and how they grow and they pivot and they reinvent themselves, because I think a lot of those actors from 30-something are now behind the camera. And it's so interesting because in some ways it reminds us that we can do that as well, you know. And I feel as if I almost had that message which was, hey, remember who you were. And I don't know. So I think today's episode is just that simple moment of nostalgia. You know, it was as if it was a mirror showing me who I was, who I am, and who I am becoming and can become. So, you know, so that was wonderful. And on the flip side, I'm more acutely aware of people who've had their families destroyed, their memories destroyed, you know, whether it's in terms of buildings, schools, universities, or whether their hard drives have been destroyed and their pictures, and, you know, and obviously losing family as well. And so I don't know, I just wanted to share that with everyone. I really was quite excited about this episode because at the end of the day, I feel that if you're stuck, overwhelmed, or just disconnected from yourself, maybe you can revisit someone or something that you loved a long time ago, whether it's a show, a book, a place, and not in a way to escape life, but to remember the parts of yourself that, I don't know, that feel like home. Because nostalgia isn't regression, it's recognition. It's recognition. Oh, wow. I don't know. I've just had so much fun sharing this with you. Apologies if you haven't watched 30-something. It is available on YouTube, so please feel free to watch it. And yeah, they were just my favourite characters. And it's interesting because I think although Friends was great, but it was more light-hearted because people were younger. Whereas in 30-something, you know, they were really, they were people with a conscience. So they were constantly battling against life, the challenges of life, and always trying to do the right thing with compassion whilst exposing their vulnerabilities. And I do feel very grateful that I grew up without the internet, because at the end of the day, you know, there was the innocence of Little House on the Prairie and then the complexity of 30-something. But of course, I think younger people now, it's just so much more difficult because they're just exposed to everything. And although terrible things were happening when I was a youngster, I wasn't exposed, I guess, because the internet wasn't there. I wasn't exposed to it. And for that, I feel very blessed. So until the next episode, let's all create connection with ourselves. You know, let's really connect with who we are, and let's connect with others, and let's not just change lives, but let's save lives.